coffee in Dr. Gregory Pierce's mug didn't just ripple, it danced violently across the ceramic rim, spilling onto his pristine white coat. The vibration rattled the tempered glass of the ICU windows, a low-frequency thrum that felt less like sound and more like an earthquake in the chest. Chaos erupted at the nurse's station as monitors flickered and papers swept off the desk. This wasn't a standard medical transport. The distinctive, terrifying whoomp 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 of heavy rotors drowned out the hospital alarms. Outside, blinding floodlights cut through the rain, illuminating the helipad where unauthorized landing gear was crushing the no-parking paint. It was a Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk, painted in matte, stealth black with no tail numbers. As the side doors slid open and 6 armed figures in tactical gear fast roped onto the roof, Dr. Pierce realized with a sinking dread that the hysterical woman in bed 4 wasn't having a panic attack. She was the most important person in the building, and he had just signed his own professional death warrant. 2 hours before the windows shook, the emergency room at St. Jude's Medical Center in Seattle was operating at its usual chaotic rhythm. It was a Friday night, which meant overdoses, car accidents, and the usual flood of flu symptoms. Sarah Jenkins sat in a plastic chair in the waiting room, her knuckles white as she gripped the armrests. To the casual observer, Sarah looked like nothing special. She was 42, wearing a faded grey hoodie, loose sweatpants, and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her face was pale, slick with a sheen of cold sweat. She wasn't making a scene. She wasn't screaming like the man with the broken ankle 3 rows back, nor was she demanding attention like the woman claiming to have a spider bite on her neck. Sarah was silent, but inside her chest, a war was raging. She checked her watch. Her heart rate was sitting at 140 beats per minute while resting. Her blood pressure, she estimated based on the pounding in her ears, was plummeting. She felt the telltale pressure on her chest, distinct from a heart attack. Something sharper, more fluid. "Jenkins, Sarah?" a triage nurse called out, sounding bored. Sarah stood up, swaying slightly. She steadied herself against the wall and walked to the triage booth. The nurse, a young woman named Tiffany, who was chewing gum aggressively, didn't look up from her screen. "Reason for visit?" Tiffany asked, typing before Sarah even spoke. "Pericardial effusion," Sarah said, her voice raspy but firm. "Possible cardiac tamponade. I have a history of idiopathic scarring from chemical exposure. I need a bedside echo and a stat troponin workup." Tiffany stopped typing. She slowly looked up, her eyes narrowing. She looked at Sarah's hoodie, her lack of makeup, the cheap sneakers. Then she looked at the screen where Sarah's insurance information, standard state-provided care, was listed. "So you're a doctor now?" Tiffany asked, a smirk playing on her lips. "Or did you just spend all night on WebMD?" "I'm a nurse," Sarah said, leaning heavily on the desk as a wave of dizziness hit her. "I spent 20 years in trauma and critical care. I know the symptoms. My heart sounds will be muffled. My jugular veins are likely distended. Please, I need to see a physician immediately." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Look, honey, everyone who comes in here with chest pain thinks they're dying. Anxiety presents with shortness of breath and rapid heart rate. We're full. Take a seat. We'll call you when a bed opens." "This isn't anxiety," Sarah whispered, the room starting to spin. I have a specific medical history. Check the VA database if you have access, or just listen to my heart." "Go sit down, Miss Jenkins," Tiffany snapped, pointing to the waiting area. "If you make a scene, I'll have security escort you out. We have people with real injuries waiting." Sarah gritted her teeth. The rage flared, hot and familiar, but she pushed it down. Getting angry would raise her heart rate, and her heart couldn't handle the stress. She nodded slowly, turned, and walked back to the plastic chair. She knew she was dying, and she knew that in this civilian hospital, without her uniform, without her rank, she was just another hysterical woman in a grey hoodie. She sat down, closed her eyes, and focused on her breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The tactical breathing kept her conscious, but barely. She watched the clock on the wall. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, a spot opened up. Not a room, but a gurney in the hallway, separated from the foot traffic by a flimsy curtain. Sarah was ushered onto the bed. 10 minutes later, Dr. Gregory Pierce swept through the curtain. Pierce was the kind of doctor who looked like he had been cast for a TV show. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably groomed, with a stethoscope that looked like it cost more than Sarah's car. He was the chief of emergency medicine, and he wore his arrogance like a suit of armor. He didn't introduce himself. He just grabbed the clipboard at the foot of the bed. "Sarah Jenkins," he read, his tone flat. "Complaint of chest pain. Nurse notes say you were insistent on a diagnosis." He chuckled dryly, glancing at her. "Self-diagnosing is a dangerous game, Miss Jenkins." "I'm not playing," Sarah managed to say. "Dr. Pierce, is it? Please, listen to my heart sounds. Beck's Triad. I have low arterial blood pressure, distended neck veins, and muffled heart sounds. I need a pericardiocentesis before my heart is compressed to the point of arrest." Pierce sighed, the sound loud and theatrical. He pulled his stethoscope from his neck and placed it on her chest for all of 3 seconds. He moved it once, then pulled away. "Your heart sounds are fast, Miss Jenkins," Pierce said, folding his arms, "which is consistent with a panic attack. You're hyperventilating." "I am not hyperventilating," Sarah said, gripping the side rails. "I served in the 75th Ranger Regiment as a forward surgical specialist. I know the difference between panic and tamponade." Pierce froze. He looked her up and down, taking in the grey hoodie and the sweatpants. He let out a short, mocking laugh. "The Rangers?" he scoffed. "Sure, and I'm the Surgeon General. Look, Miss Jenkins, stolen valor aside, you are wasting my time. I'm ordering 2 milligrams of lorazepam to calm you down, and then we're discharging you. We need this bed for sick patients." "If you discharge me," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "I will die in your parking lot, and when the autopsy comes back, it will show fluid around the heart, and my death will be on your license." Pierce leaned in close, his cologne overpowering the smell of antiseptic. "Let me be clear. I don't like being threatened by drug-seeking junkies with a hero complex. You get the sedative, or you get security. Your choice." He turned on his heel and walked away, snapping his fingers at a passing nurse. "Sedate her. Discharging in 1 hour." Sarah watched him go. A single tear tracked through the sweat on her cheek. She wasn't crying from fear. She was crying from frustration. She reached into the pocket of her sweatpants. Her fingers brushed against her smartphone. She didn't want to do this. She had promised herself she would live a quiet life after the Kandahar extraction. She wanted to be normal. She wanted to be just Sarah Jenkins. But Dr. Pierce had left her no choice. The nurse who came to administer the lorazepam was named Chloe. She was young, perhaps fresh out of nursing school, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. She looked at the order on the tablet, then looked at Sarah. "I don't want the sedative," Sarah said, her voice weak. The pressure in her chest was building, like a vice tightening around her sternum. "I have to follow Dr. Pierce's orders," Chloe whispered apologetically. She reached for Sarah's arm to check her pulse manually. When Chloe's fingers touched Sarah's wrist, the young nurse frowned. She shifted her position, checking again. Then she looked at Sarah's neck. "Your veins," Chloe murmured. "They're bulging." "Distended jugular," Sarah corrected gently. "And if you listen to my chest, it sounds like I'm underwater." Chloe bit her lip. She looked towards the nursing station where Dr. Pierce was laughing with a pharmaceutical rep, flirting openly. Chloe made a decision. She pulled her stethoscope out and placed it on Sarah's chest, listening intently for a long time. She pulled back, her eyes wide. It's so quiet. I can barely hear the beat, but the monitor says you're at 150. "Fluid is blocking the sound," Sarah explained. The sac around my heart is filling with blood or fluid. It's squeezing the heart so it can't pump. That's why my pulse is weak." "I need to tell him," Chloe said, panic rising in her voice. "He won't listen," Sarah said. "He thinks I'm a junkie." Chloe shook her head. "No, this is real." She turned and ran towards the desk. Sarah watched through the gap in the curtain. She saw Chloe approach Dr. Pierce. She saw the young nurse gesture urgently towards the hallway. She saw Pierce's face darken with annoyance. He waved a hand dismissively, not even looking away from the rep. Chloe persisted. She pointed at the monitor. Finally, Pierce slammed a file down on the desk and turned on Chloe. His voice carried down the hall. "Am I the attending here, or are you? I told you she is having a psychosomatic episode. If you bother me with this again, I'll have you written up for insubordination. Give her the damn Ativan." Chloe shrank back, humiliated. The other nurses looked away, afraid to challenge the chief. Pierce stormed over to the hallway bed, ripping the curtain back so hard the rings screeched against the metal track. "You," he pointed a finger at Sarah, "you are disrupting my ER. You are manipulating my junior staff. I am cancelling the sedative. You are being discharged immediately. Get up." Sarah tried to sit up, but the world tilted violently. Her vision grayed out at the edges. "I can't." "Stop the drama," Pierce spat. "Security, I need an escort in hallway B." Two burly security guards began walking down the corridor. Sarah realized this was the end of the line for civilian protocol. She had tried to play by their rules. She had tried to be polite. But Dr. Gregory Pierce was going to kill her to protect his ego. "Chloe," Sarah whispered. The young nurse was standing nearby, looking terrified. "Yes?" Chloe stepped closer, ignoring Pierce's glare. "I need you to do one thing for me," Sarah said, her breath hitching. "I need you to not let them move me for 3 minutes." I can try," Chloe stammered. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out an old, ruggedized flip phone. It wasn't her smartphone. It was a dense, black device with no screen, just a keypad and a single red button. It was a relic from a life she had left behind, a secure satellite uplink given to Tier 1 operators and high-value assets who held information critical to national security. She hadn't turned it on in 4 years. "What is that?" Pierce sneered. "Calling your dealer?" Sarah flipped the device open. The small light on the top pulsed green, locking onto a satellite signal instantly. She pressed the red button and held it to her ear. There was no ringing, just a click, and then a voice. Clear, cold, and immediate. Asset ID. Sierra Juliet 19er. Authentication, broken arrow. Sarah's voice changed. The weakness remained, but the tone was pure command. There was a pause of less than a second. Voice print confirmed. Major Jenkins. Status? Medical emergency. Critical failure. Civilian facility is hostile and refusing treatment. Condition? Cardiac tamponade. I have maybe 20 minutes. Location? St. Jude's Medical Center, Seattle, ER hallway. Hold the line, Major. Routing to General Davidson. Dr. Pierce stared at her. For the first time, a flicker of confusion crossed his face. The way she spoke, it wasn't the rambling of a crazy woman. It was the clipped, efficient dialect of the military. "Who are you talking to?" Pierce demanded, stepping forward to grab the phone. "Don't touch her!" Chloe shouted, stepping in front of the doctor. It was a shocking act of defiance. "Get out of my way, you stupid girl," Pierce growled. He shoved Chloe aside and reached for Sarah. Sarah looked him dead in the eye. "If you touch this phone, you will be committing a federal felony." Pierce hesitated, his hand hovering inches from her face. On the other end of the line, a new voice spoke. It was a deep, gravelly baritone that Sarah hadn't heard since the mountains of Afghanistan. "Sarah, this is Iron Mike. General Michael Davidson, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff." "Mike," Sarah wheezed, the darkness closing in on her vision. "I'm going down. They won't treat me. They think I'm a junkie." "Who is they?" Davidson's voice was low and terrifyingly calm. "Dr. Pierce, St. Jude S. Sarah, listen to me. Keep breathing. Do not die on me. We are 40 miles out conducting drills at Lewis McCord. I'm redirecting the bird. I have a ghost team airborne. I don't have time for a transport, Sarah gasped. We aren't transporting you, Major. We're bringing the hospital to you, and God help anyone standing in your way. The line went dead. Sarah let the phone drop to her chest. She looked up at Dr. Pierce, who was now signaling the security guards to grab her. Get her out of here, Pierce ordered. Drag her if you have to. You're making a mistake, Sarah whispered, her eyes rolling back as consciousness began to slip. The only mistake, Pierce said, grabbing her arm, was letting you in here. As the security guard's hand clamped onto her shoulder, a sound began to build in the distance. A rhythmic thumping. It started low, vibrating the instruments on the trays. Then it grew louder and louder. The glass of water on the bedside table began to ripple. The noise became a physical force. The entire emergency room froze. Patients stopped moaning. Nurses stopped typing. The vibration rattled the ceiling tiles, sending dust motes dancing into the sterile air. What is that? A resident asked, looking at the ceiling. Earthquake? Someone suggested. No, Dr. Pierce muttered, looking at the window. That's a helicopter, but the helipad is reserved for medevac only, and we have no inbound flights. He marched to the window that looked out over the ambulance bay and the lower roof structure. What he saw stopped his heart. A massive black shape was descending out of the storm clouds. It wasn't the red and white of a medical chopper. It was a beast of war, a modified MH-60 Blackhawk, bristling with antennas and external fuel tanks. It didn't have lights on. It was flying dark until the last second when blinding floodlights snapped on, bathing the hospital roof in pure white illumination. What the hell? Pierce breathed. Back in the hallway, the security guard, a man named Gary, who was just doing his job, looked down at Sarah. She was unconscious now, her head lolling to the side. "Doctor!" Chloe screamed. "She's coding! No pulse!" Gary let go of Sarah immediately, backing away. "I didn't do it. She just went limp." Pierce turned from the window, his face pale. The noise outside was deafening now. He ran back to the hallway. "Get the crash cart, epinephrine, start compressions." "You said she was faking it," Chloe yelled, tears streaming down her face as she climbed onto the gurney and began chest compressions on Sarah. Crack, crack, the sound of ribs straining under the force. "Shut up and pump," Pierce yelled. He grabbed the paddles. Suddenly the double doors at the main entrance of the ER, the ambulance bay doors, burst open. They didn't just slide open, they were kicked open with such force that one of them shattered. The sound of the helicopter was loud, but the silence that fell over the room as the figures entered was absolute. 6 men entered. They were dressed in full tactical combat gear, multicam black, body armor, helmets with quad-nocular night vision goggles flipped up. They carried short-barreled rifles, not pointed at the patients,